Hey guys, Godzy here once again, bringing you another tutorial, this one being on tank destroyers. Today in the video I'm going to be covering everything from the most useless stuff to the most important stuff. Please keep in mind though that my opinion will vary when it comes to loadouts and stuff, but this is all subjective, so I hope you enjoy the video and let's dive right in. Unlocks. Okay, so we're going to go all the way back to the start and talk about all the unlocks possible with tank destroyers. A lot of these upgrades are useless though, so we're going to talk about those ones first and explain what they do and why they're useless. So to start off, in slot 1 we have maintenance. What this does is it lets your tank regenerate health a lot faster than it normally would, but compared to what else is in slot 1, it's basically useless. Moving on, also in slot 1 we have thermal camo. What this unlock does is that it increases the lock-on time for javelins and guided missiles. On top of this, it also reduces the time that you remain spotted on the minimap. In saying this though, this unlock is just not good enough compared to the other unlocks in slot 1. Lastly, in slot 1 we have the autoloader. This unlock simply decreases the time it takes to fire a second shell from the main turret. It's not good for much compared to the other unlocks in slot 1, but if you're doing long range sniping in the tank for some reason, you might pick it. Moving on to slot 2, we have 4 unlocks here. Each of these unlocks has its use in one place or another, but there's really only one that I'd pick myself, but we'll come back to that later. Moving on to slot 3 though, we have the canister shell, which is basically a giant shotgun, but now that they nerfed it into oblivion and it shares a cooldown with the main turret, it just sucks compared to the coaxial LMG. Finishing up, we have the guided shell and the cannon HE. The cannon HE is just like the canister shell where it shares a cooldown with the main turret. This is something I definitely avoid. And lastly we have the guided shell. This is basically a missile that locks onto tank and aircraft if they're laser designated. This is something I wouldn't personally use myself, but if you're working with soft lammers you might want to pick it. As you can see here, we're left with 7 of the 14 unlocks left that we started with. So let's get started with the section 1. In section 1 we're left with proximity scan and reactive armor. What proximity scanner does is sends out a constant pulse from your tank that detects nearby infantry. As for reactive armor, it puts 4 explosive plates around your tank. What these plates do is that when an explosive hits that side of your tank, the plate will explode, protecting your tank, but the plate will disappear. You can repair the plate by getting out and repairing that side of the tank for about 5 seconds. Now when it comes down to proximity scanner and reactive armor is definitely the best path to go for tank destroyers. This is because tank destroyers are only located on AK maps where you need a lot of protection from other tanks. Proximity scanner is something that I would only use on tanks like IFVs and MBTs in maps like Bazaar and Siem where your main enemy is infantry. Moving on to section 2, we still have 4 unlocks left. We have smoke, which basically protects you from missiles and keeps you alive, zoom optics, which gives you a 3 times magnification, and thermal optics, which makes everything black and white, enemies will show up white. We also have extinguisher, which will return you to 45% health if you are disabled. Now we're left with the question of which one of the 4 to pick. Well, when it comes to armor kill and tank destroyers, it's really quite simple. As much as zoom optics, thermal optics, and extinguisher might be nice, smoke is the only choice here. With so many guided shells coming after your tank, if you don't pick smoke, you're going to be dead in 1 to 2 minutes. With that solved now, let's move on to section 3. As you can see here, section 3 is just like section 1 in that there's only 2 choices left. This makes our decision a lot easier. For me personally though, the coaxial LMG is the way to go. This is because the tow missile can be a very hard missile to use at times, and it doesn't give you any infantry capabilities like the coaxial LMG does. As you can see here, the tow missile is a very slow moving user guided missile. This makes it very hard to use in short and long range encounters. Short range encounters it's hard to use because with the collision detections of tanks, it can be very hard to get an easy shot off in close quarters. Long range however, it can be very hard to hit a moving target because if they stop at the last second your missile could miss because it's so hard to track at long ranges. The coaxial LMG however gives you enhanced infantry capabilities, making it the better choice of the 2 if you ask me. At the end of the day though, this choice comes down to personal preference. So there it is, the loadout I highly suggest using. It's served me well in the past, it might serve you, I don't know, it's up to you. So let's move on to something else now in damage. In this section I want to talk about the damage you can expect to take compared to an MBT. But first of all it's best to know how damage works with tanks. As you can see here, the straighter the shot from the RPG to the back of the tank, the more damage it will do. This works the same for all sides. In this next image we can see an estimated damage expectation for all the angles on an MBT. As you would notice from the first image, this will vary depending on the angle, but this gives you a good estimate. What we can also learn from this image is that the MBTs and the destroyers do the same damage with their main turret. In this last image we can see the damages a tank destroyer can expect to take. What's really interesting about these tanks is that they take the same damage from all sides, even the back. What this also means is that they can never be disabled in one shot, a very interesting factor for a tank. Speed, design and bullet drop. In this final main section we're going to talk about the many physical aspects that separate the tank destroyers from the MBTs. In this first clip we can notice that the M1128 seems to have the highest aiming angle of the 4 tanks, with the sprut-sd having the lowest. In saying this though, as you can clearly see, the sprut-sd has the smallest bodywork of all the 4 tanks, giving it the smallest target to hit. In regards to shell speed and drop however, this next clip will show you that the destroyers have a much smaller drop off. In regards to speed however, I believe that they have the same speed as both shells reach the target at about 5 seconds, with the MBTs hitting the ground a tiny bit sooner because of the bigger drop off. Lastly, and maybe most importantly in this section, is speed and or maneuverability. In this last clip you can see me get my friend to take off first, and then I take off once I see him start to move. What you'll notice is that I actually pull ahead, but once we reach max speed we both go the same speed. This is because MBTs and tank destroyers actually have the same top speed. Tank destroyers only have fast acceleration. This is still a very valuable upgrade because it lets you get away from C4 people faster, people trying to repair to your tank, and get over those little hills that seem to really slow you down in MBTs. Tips and extras. So just to finish up, we're just going to start off with some tips first. Tank destroyers become a lot more effective if you have even just one friend. A good idea is to run around with one buddy and use up all your reactive plates, and then when they're all used up, just swap tanks and you have 8 new reactive plates, all brand new and ready to use up again. Secondly, make sure you always smoke before you start repairing your tank. If a javelin is fired at your tank while you're outside of it and you don't know it's coming, the explosion will kill you with area effect damage. Thirdly, when a heli is attacking you, make sure to drive towards the heli. What this does is it makes them dive, putting their nose down further because they want to get as many shots off as they can at you. When they do this dive, you can turn around and get them on the follow through hopefully, if they're kind of stupid. And of course, last but not least, when repairing a tank, if it's not full health and you can't see the repairing circle because you can't always see it, you can actually know when the tank is at full health because the noise that the tank is making when you're repairing it will change. It will stop sizzling so much, as you can see in this clip here. So that's about all I have for tips and tricks right now. But here's some thoughts to part with on the way out. The sprut-sd has the smallest bodywork of the 4 tanks, making it the hardest to hit, but it also has the lowest targeting angle. Another pro that it does have is that because it's on tracks, it can turn on the spot, making much better use of its reactive armor. As for the M1128, because it has the same wheel design as the LAV-AD, it can get up to incredible speeds if used right. On top of this, it also has the highest aiming angle, but it has a bigger bodywork than the sprut-sd. It also can't turn on the spot because of its wheel design, so it is a bit harder for it to use its reactive armor than the sprut-sd. So guys, with these facts in mind, please let me know in the comments what's your favorite tank destroyer. Mine's definitely the sprut-sd. I love how it looks, the small bodywork on it, the turn on the spot for the reactive armor, all these things I love about it. Even if it aims a little bit lower and it can't get that massive speed like the M1128 can, I don't mind. The pros for it, to me, are just way too big. Also, one last thought on the way out, the tank destroyer is the lowest points required for a service star, at only 24,000. That's a measly 2.4 million for a 100 service star gold dog tag. So if you want one, this might be the best way to get it. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure you let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, have a good one.